this might well be the best explanation of burnout you've never heard of. Today, I want to share an exciting idea with you. What if we've been thinking about burnout completely wrong this whole time? I've recently been doing a lot of research trying to get to the bottom of my own fatigue, and in revisiting polyvagal theory, I've discovered a level of nuance I hadn't previously considered that makes all the difference. Hi everyone, Paul Mikulev here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos exploring neurodivergence and emotional intelligence, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. Do you find that sounds bother you more than they used to? Or that life just feels unexplainably heavier and harder for no particular reason? I mean, I look back to my 20s and all the stuff that I used to do. I was so active, I was so social, I went out quite a bit, I committed myself and volunteered for things and had so much energy. Where has all of that gone? Is it just getting older? Maybe that was my theory for a while. Maybe in my 40s, I just can't expect to have that level of energy. But that doesn't really make sense either, because I'm looking at my parents' generation in their 60s and 70s, and they have 5 times, 10 times as much energy as I seem to. They can stay up after 10 p.m. and be fine the next day, or have a night of only 6 hours sleep, and it doesn't necessarily completely wreck them for the entire week. So, what's going on? Why am I so sensitive? Is it just me? Is it my autism? Is it getting worse? Is there anything I can do about it? I mean, yes, there are some advantages to being sensitive, but why do so many everyday things, everyday situations just drain me so much? There have been essentially two main, school of thought ways to approach answering this type of question that I've heard in the past. The first one is essentially the neurotypical mainstream approach, which is the toughen up approach, for lack of a better word. If you're too sensitive, if you're not used to an environment, then you go into a more stimulating environment and you get used to the environment, right? So instead of changing the environment, we're talking about changing myself, toughening up, getting used to difficult things. And that kind of makes sense to a degree. I know that when I first started like a full-time job, for example, I remember thinking, how on earth am I going to be able to go to work for 8 hours a day? Like, I feel like I need a break after half an hour or 1 hour. But after a while, I got used to it. And then suddenly I could get to the end of the day without too much trouble. So there's definitely some degree of truth behind that. Or another example I can think of, a couple of years back, I joined a gym and started doing HIIT classes, high intensity interval training. And I remember after that first class being completely wrecked. And then the next day, my whole body, all muscles and legs, just really felt it from the day before. And I thought, how on earth do people do this every day? I met someone in the class who was going to do 2 classes back to back. How on earth do you put yourself through that? But as you can imagine, I got used to it. And after a little while, I was doing 5 or 6 classes a week because my body just got used to doing this extra level of activity. So that's option one that we often hear: how to deal with sensitivity, toughen up, get used to it, put yourself out there, and just sort of build up the tolerance. But there's also the advocacy approach to what to do when you're feeling particularly sensitive, which is essentially the polar opposite of that, is to modify your environment to match your sensitivity. If the noise is bothering me, then make the noise go away. If the lights are too bright, then turn them down or block them out or something, so that I am no longer exposed to the stimulus that is causing the problem. Who says I have to work 8 hours straight? What if I work half days instead? If the supermarket is overstimulating, then I'll wear earplugs or go at a time when it's less busy and there's less people around. In other words, instead of trying to toughen myself up so I can deal with really harsh environments, what if we change the environment so that it's less hostile? What if the environment was nice? Then it wouldn't have to be like I'm running a gauntlet just to get to work and back every day. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Why subject yourself to needless punishment? And here's where today's exciting idea comes in. What if both of those approaches are wrong? Or put another way, what if both of them are right? There's clearly some merit to getting used to something. If I've never slept in a hammock before, chances are my first night is going to be pretty terrible, but I might actually get used to it after a little while and then it could be fine. Similarly, changing the environment doesn't make my sensitivity go away. Wrapping myself in cotton wool doesn't give me the opportunity to build my capacity. We know that to learn and grow requires stepping out of our comfort zone, but what people often miss is that we need a small step outside of our comfort zone, not a big step. A big step outside of your comfort zone is what I call the danger zone. It is the area where you're likely to have a bad experience because it's likely to be too much, it's likely to be overwhelming, and the only thing you're going to learn is that was bad, I'm never going to do that again. How about I run straight back to my safety zone? So I kind of already knew all of that, but this is where what I learned recently about polyvagal theory just takes everything to the next level. Polyvagal theory talks about vagal tone and flexibility. And what they mean by that is your ability to dial up and dial down depending on the situation. A really good analogy is your night vision in your eyes. If we turned off all these lights and there was hardly any light in the room, it would take my eyes a little while to adjust to the new light level. My pupils would open and it would let in more light and I would become more and more and more sensitive so that I could make the most of the limited light in the room. Which is great. Suddenly I can see kind of in the dark, whereas previously I couldn't. As soon as the lights went out, I couldn't see anything. But then imagine if I had to try and go through my whole day with that level of sensitivity in my eyes. Even average daylight, let alone going outside on a sunny day, everything would be too much all the time. I would essentially be blind in 95% of life if I only had that very, very highly sensitive night vision on all the time. What's supposed to happen if my body can regulate itself is that in brighter environments, my eyes let in less light, and that way I can still function even in brighter environments. So this puts the toughen up strategy in a different perspective. If my body has the flexibility to adapt, then actually getting used to something is a really good idea. However, if my body does not have the flexibility to adapt, then going out in the full sunshine when my eyes are stuck on night vision is a terrible idea. If my eyes are stuck on night vision, then probably the best thing I can do is sit in a dark room and not overstimulate them. But here's the thing, sitting in a dark room, changing your environment to match your sensitivity, it doesn't necessarily help you to become unstuck. And that's where polyvagal theory comes in, because it explains how a person can get stuck and also the kinds of things we can do to improve that vagal tone, to improve flexibility so that we can adapt in different situations. If you're really, really sick, then it's better to go to hospital than to be forced to toughen up and just go to work anyway. But that's only half the story. Once you're in hospital, the next step is to find a way to get better so that you can leave the hospital and go back to work and re-engage with the outside world. So the exciting thing that I'm learning this week, or at least learning in a much, much deeper way this week, is that our bodies have different modes, like different configurations, physiological and neurological configurations. which means that in order to do certain things, our bodies need time to adapt, to change our physiology so that we can actually do that thing. Night vision is a good example of taking some time for my eyes to adjust to the new level of light. This is why athletes warm up before performing. This is why it takes some time to fall asleep and some time to wake up. Sprinting and sleeping require different physiological configurations in our body. Hormones, blood sugar, heart rate, brain activity, lots of stuff. It all needs to be aligned in the right way for a particular task. And actually, this is a bit of a side note, but this is one of the things I'm explaining in my book, is that one of the roles of our emotions is to physiologically prepare our bodies for action of what we think we're going to need in the future. And by the future, I mean like 30 seconds from now. So if ideally a healthy individual can efficiently change between states, what can we do if we feel like we're getting stuck? What happens when the off button doesn't work? I'll give you an example. My cousin actually recently told me he developed insomnia. You'll never guess how. That's right, lack of sleep. Did you know that sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night for a while can cause insomnia? At first, that sounds really silly because you'd think the tireder you are, the easier it would be to fall asleep. But thinking it through from a process perspective and a biological level, by skipping sleep, I am training my body to be really, really unbearably tired and to stay awake. So my body gets used to being unbearably tired and keeping itself awake, which means when you go to bed and say, let's go to sleep now, your body says, nah, don't worry about it. I got this. I know how to stay awake even though we're unbearably tired because you've trained me to do that. And that means you've only got 4 hours to sleep before you need to be up again and you can't actually get to sleep. Anyway, mind-blowing is that, I find. So what I've realized now in terms of my own fatigue and my own burnout is my relationship to rest, like cognitive rest, is similar to an insomniac's relationship to sleep. I know I need rest. I know I need to wind down. I know I need to relax. But I have spent so much time training my brain and my body to stay awake, stay alert, keep pushing through, even though you're unbearably tired. And so now, when I actually want to rest, it just doesn't work. This means if I want to increase my capacity, it's not enough to simply take away the demands. Even if I design the perfectly optimized environment to live and work, it's still not going to be enough because the problem is not my sensitivity and how quickly I get overwhelmed. The problem is that my nervous system, my physiological system is stuck in the highly sensitive state, which is fantastic in some situations. But what I need to do is find a way to calm the system down, retrain it so that I can be flexible enough to adapt when there are more things in my environment that I need to take care of. Essentially, learning to power down is only half the story. I would be much better off if I could learn to power up and to power down as necessary. Do you remember my video a little while back on responsibility hypervigilance? It feels like when there's something I need to do, I can't forget it, which means I need to keep that tab open just in case, because I can't close it. Otherwise, I might forget that task. And in that sense, I've been training myself to be always on, even in the background, even while I'm resting. What I need is to shut down completely. close all of those extra tabs, put down everything that is currently taking up space in my brain, and properly enter a deep state of rest. And I've done this periodically. Like, I take at least 6 weeks off every year over the summer, but it doesn't seem to be enough because as soon as I go back to work, the problem just repeats itself. Now I'm learning that the underlying problem is an inability to switch from being on to being off. It takes me such a long time to switch from on to off that it only happens if I take 6 weeks off. And that means I'm on for 10 to 12 months every year. Imagine a job that said, you don't get a day off, you don't get a weekend, you work 10 months straight, and then you can have some time off. That's just not how our physiology is designed. That's only mildly better than how about you work for 4 days straight and then you can sleep for the rest of the week. So this puts an entirely new spin on what I am trying to do to recover from burnout, to slowly increase my capacity again. It will not help to simply go into hibernate mode. That would be like trying to cure insomnia by forcing yourself to stay in bed 24/7. Instead, I need to stress myself out, have something where I'm on and I'm productive and I'm doing something, and then train my body with routines to come out of that mode into a relaxed, open state where I'm alert but relaxed. What I've realized recently is I don't know how to be alert and relaxed. Whenever I'm relaxed, I fall asleep. In any guided meditation I've ever been in my life, I have fallen asleep. And I thought that had something to do with not getting enough sleep or just being really good at sleep. But now I'm realizing I just don't know how to put my body and my brain in that mode of being off but still being awake. How do I rest if I can't do anything to rest other than sleep? Because all of my hobbies and all of my interests and all of the things that I do in my recreation, like rejuvenation time, they're not actually helping me to rest because I'm still on in my brain, still thinking about everything. It's always puzzled me on these like energy accounting exercises where they ask you, what are some things that you can do to recover energy? And for me, it's really hard to name anything other than sleep. So I've always wondered why that is. I've always wondered what it's like for other people who seem to just list things that give them energy. But now I'm realizing through the lens of polyvagal theory, it makes perfect sense. So in summary, don't just toughen up. If you're sensitive for a physiological reason, then putting yourself in harsh environments is likely to lead to overstimulation and complete shutdown, neither of which helps recovery. And similarly, going into complete hibernation and withdrawing from anything that is too much might be okay in the short term, might even be necessary in the short term. But ultimately, the goal is to learn how to get that ability to transition, to become unstuck so that you can access these other states in your body. Anyway, at least that's what's made sense to me recently. I hope sharing some of these ideas has been useful for you as well today. If you'd like to get more involved with Autism from the Inside, check out our online social group, Facebook page, and Discord server. We also have an online membership community through the AFTI website. And if you're specifically looking for a way to support this channel financially, you can do that on Patreon. If you're able, I encourage you to sign up to the lowest tier. It's literally $1 per week, and it makes a big difference. Anyway, I'd better leave it there for today. Like, comment, subscribe, all of those things. I always appreciate hearing what you think, so please leave a comment if you can. And I guess I will see you again next week. Bye.